Hey everybody, this is our second book by Holding Clancy Holding. Pagoo. Pagoo is also like Minn of the Mississippi in that there are 20 chapters. There are the really nice line drawings and then the really big pretty colored pictures at the end of each chapter. Pagoo is this little creature who lives in a tidal pool. He is a hermit crab. And one of my kids had a hermit crab growing up. They were a lot of fun. And here's what the little hermit crab looks like when he's first hatched. Pagoo might be a hermit crab. Little Pagoo for short, floated out the surface of the sea. Pagoo would grow into a two-fisted hermit crab, if he could make it. Someday he would live near shore, walking on a sea floor of rock and sand, but before he could walk on the sea's bottom, he must drift on to its top, as helpless as a fleck of foam. Pagoo's chances of growing up were not very good. Pagoo was quite small, because he had just been hatched from an egg the size of a pencil dot. You could see partway through him, that is, if you could first find his glassy body to slide under a microscope. Whatever he looked like, it certainly was not a two-fisted, happy-go-lucky hermit crab, or any other crab. His large eyes looked like eyes, but the rest of him was all points and joints and fuzzy places. If he had been larger, say 50 times larger, he might pass as a fancy ornament for a Christmas tree. But he was not up in a tree. He was down in a salty ocean, and Pagoo was too small to add much of a sparkle to the point of a pin. Pagoo was lucky to be so small, to have a glassy body looking like the water around him, to be almost invisible. In this big ocean, being seen could bring death. Even now, shadows of death swam towards him, gigantic things almost half an inch long. Behind Pagoo, in front of Pagoo, below and above, on both sides of him, the shadowy things were gliding with mouths wide open. They were swallowing sparkly creatures, something like Pagoo, bright flecks in the water which glistened, danced, and then disappeared. Pagoo was only a newly hatched baby and could not know what was happening. The giant shadows sucked up his shivering neighbors, somehow passed by him, and little Pagoo was left in the sea with nothing to look at but water. The water was very nice. It was a rocking cradle, and Pagoo was content. Though his parents were nowhere near, his instincts always would be. Ancient instinct is a guardian for the very young, who have yet had no time to learn new things. The young are born with an instinct that tells them what to do and how to do it. Instinct becomes a trusted pal. So, Pagoo's old pal Instinct would pass along the lessons for living, learned by his ancestors long ago in ancient seas. Such advice would come to Pagoo in private hermit crab code, but he would understand. Whole seconds of time passed before old pal's messages said, "You're hungry." And sure enough he was. "Try out your mouth parts." Set him to moving them. This part went over, that went down, and they all worked. As he pushed his new feathery fronds at the water, Pooh bumped things like strings of hard-shelled candies. Old pal Instinct said, "Food!" And so Pagoo pushed them into the slot where they should go. Pagoo was eating. Each diatom Pagoo ate shimmered with rainbow colors. Though its shell was glassy and brittle, it was a living plant, and Pagoo crunched it greedily. He was eating the first food of most animal life in the sea. Tiny creatures eat diatoms. Larger creatures eat the tiny ones. Still larger animals feed on them, and so on. A chain of life from rainbow shimmers up to whales and beyond. In this endless food chain, Pagoo would be lucky to eat his diatoms and not be eaten. He stared towards glassy diatom sparks as they soaked up watery sunbeams. By some strange plant magic, the diatoms were changing tasteless sunlight into tasty vegetable jelly inside themselves. But this great wonder of sunlight, changing to food before his very eyes, did not bother Pagoo. He did not have to think about it. He just kept eating. Once he started eating, Pagoo found that this ocean was one huge kettle of food. Besides crispy diatom vegetables, This kettle had soft plant jellies or algae. Wonderful algae seaweed salads came with meat floating by from the feasts of fishes. Waves churned all food into bits so small that the water itself became a sort of soup. Being seawater, of course, the soup was salted exactly right. Pagoo could lie in soup and eat it too, so he was happy. Others besides Pagoo were eating the soup of the sea. He was alone a few moments before, and now he had neighbors again, the same kinds of creatures that the shadow has been gulping. Well, so there were other sparkly things left in the sea after all. Ornamental little Pagoo was being surrounded by a cloud of fairy ornaments. There were diamond stars and golden suns and red, green, blue, and purple jewels that kicked, wiggled, and danced in the restless ballet of the sea. Some of Pagoo's companions were the very young of sea animals, just as Pagoo was a hermit crab in its first stages of growing. A young spiny lobster near Pagoo seemed made of feathers and beads. Jellyfish flashed their clear as crystal. Crabs were spun glass. A baby squid floated by like a bulb of shining silver. This mixed crowd, with its ocean pastures of diatoms, made up the restless drifting plankton. Plankton means wandering, and many of the tiny animals would always drift with the diatom plants near the surface of the sea. Other plankton creatures would grow to be larger and stronger swimmers, ranging far out in the vast ocean. But many of the very young were only waiting, crowding along the sea's wrinkled ceiling, till time came to drop to the ocean floor and be grown up. Pagoo, as part of the plankton crowd, awaited his turn to drop below. Meanwhile, he would eat and wander with the waves. Pagoo, Chapter 1.